Good morning. It's Sunday the 26th of October. So we're coming into the final week of the month. And this week we have the FOMC rates decision. So that's on Wednesday. The expectation is 25 basis points cuts. Don't think there's any reason to expect that not to be the case. So hopefully no surprises on that front. Obviously, with it being the end of the month as well, we may see some rebalancing flows, but nothing to be too concerned about as we come into this week, I think, although, we can trade a little bit strangely around FOMC and we may just see larger players just holding off until that event is out of the way. So with that said, how have we traded over the past couple of weeks? So since the sell-off, since this low was put in last Friday, we've really just started to find some balance. So 2 weeks of overlapping value have formed provisionally around 112 value high, 107 value low. And the way things have developed towards the tail end of last week is quite encouraging. So we formed 3 days of balance here, reclaimed that value area on Friday, giving that return pull back into the value low. So looking for at least another retest of 113 from here on that basis, purely based on that composite profile. Key area of resistance around 114, which is this 2-week composite low, which is back from mid-September, which capped us earlier in the week, and that now is aligned with the 30-90-day VWAPs. So, provisionally, previously I was talking about previous month value highs, our bearish line in the sand, where we got capped here, essentially. But I think now I would revise that to 114, given the significance of this level. So 2-week composite val and the 30-90-day rolling VWAPs, both all aligned in there as well. So if we can flip this, I think game on. So, potentially some resistance at 116, but really a flip and hold of 114 would be the signal to go risk on for me. Extremely risk on. I'm already very optimistic because we've seen quite constructive developments over the back end of last week, but obviously we can't rule out the possibility that we continue to range here for longer. And even, the possibility of a probe into the yearly VWAP and 365 day, given that we're still below yearly value high, which is where we rejected from here essentially. So, there is still a possibility that we complete this rotation to yearly VWAP and maybe put in a third drive. So it's just something to be aware of. I'm hopeful that it doesn't happen because we've seen bullish developments over the back end of last week, reclaiming the developing months value, holding weekly VWAP, reclaiming this composite. But if we run into heavy responsive selling as we come into, anywhere close to where we are now, really, then there is obviously a possibility that we put in one more probe low, which would really screw everyone over, I think. But certainly can't rule that out. So, we talked about this previously, but we got this big flush of OI. On the daily, as measured by RSI, it became oversold. The last time that happened was in March and April. So, that's when we put in a significant low here. But even when we did that, we did put in another low in April. So are we going to see that again where, potentially we get one more drive lower and a bit of a bear trap into, the 100K area? That's very possible. Obviously, it's also possible that we're done and the big whales that are offloading here are actually going to mark the end of the cycle. I'm not going to entertain that until we lose the 365 day, because that has been our bullish line in the sand for well over a year now. So once we're below that, bear market, but while we're trading above it, optimistic, and if we can get above 114, then I would lean much more optimistic and expect us to potentially put in a catch-up leg to gold. Okay, so plans for the week. I mean, obviously we need to potentially just wait till FOMC is out of the way, but it's valid to get long here, it's valid to get long here, it's valid to get long here. We're coming into range highs and potentially a big area of resistance now. So I'd want to see that flipped, really, to get in swing longs. There may well be a short that sets up here early in the week, but at the moment, I mean, there are some signs, OI is getting overbought again on lower time frames. There is some passive offer here. The spot books aren't very supportive. So, if we do run into just some aggressive sellers, then very plausible that we could find another leg down. So I don't want to be adding to risk as we come into this area of resistance. Essentially, we need to see if we get, like for example, we've got this 2 weeks overlapping value now. If we should close the week above and then get back within, it's pretty easy short to play that range. And beyond that, I don't really have any clear plans for BTC right now. We just need to wait and see what sets up later. But obviously, it's going to inform direction for the rest of the market. So quite important. But yeah, if we get above 114 and certainly 116, I'd be leaning pretty bullish. Okay, let's take a look at ETH-BTC. So it is still below the 30-day VWAP. Formed this buying imbalance, which we've more or less filled out and held this area of support so far. So I'm certainly not bearish ETH-BTC, although there are reasons to be perhaps a little bit defensive until it breaks out. And when I say breaks out, I mean it's testing yearly value high here again. It's not a bad area to be looking to bid it, honestly, purely based on the technicals. If we can flip that 30-day again and just break this meme line, then I think it's probably going to start looking quite good. Potentially some kind of inverted head and shoulders pattern. So I'm not feeling too bad about ETH. I know some people are. That's fine. For me, the developments we saw at the back end of last week were also encouraging. So we had 3 days of balance, we broke down, we formed 3 more days of balance, we've attempted to break down, keeps printing higher lows. We rejected from the point of control of this previous range and then held this value low and this 3-week composite high support. So, had that broken down, I would have been looking in towards this area of overlap. But with this holding support, it's potentially a bullish change. Okay, so we are below a pretty big area of resistance. We need to get above 4K essentially. And I'd feel a lot more comfortable if we reclaimed this area. So if we can get above 40.50, then I think I'd be much more comfortable being long ETH. As it is, we have shifted back inside this composite, so technically this is a bullish change. Personally, I would side with that until proven otherwise. But if you really want to be more cautious and take leverage longs with a bit more confirmation, I think it's above 40.50, and then obviously the 30-day. But for me, this is encouraging. I mean, had we rejected here and then just broken down, I think we'd be talking about the probability of much lower prices. But with this holding, it is it's bullish reacceptance in previous value. So that's the first time that's happened. Since we started to trade lower, we rejected here. 3 days of balance broke down. 3 days of balance broke down, and now reclaiming. So potentially encouraging, but as I say, it needs to get above 40.50 before it actually starts to look more constructive. We'll see how it goes. Obviously, with BTC coming into potentially some range highs, we really need to see that break to the upside. Otherwise, ETH could be in a spot of trouble again. In terms of plans, then, so if we can get above 40.50, at least a scalp into this area, and then potentially looking higher. Otherwise, I think it's valid to be long, given that this retest held, but we do have potentially some resistance here. So yeah, I don't know. I personally, if I wasn't in a position here, I'd just wait until we're above 40.50. I think if you want to look for shorts, I personally probably need to see it back below this composite low and then start looking. But looks fine. I mean, it's slow, but there's no momentum, but it doesn't look bad based on this reacceptance picture. Sol, a bit messy. So, as I said yesterday, I was kind of, let me just clean out these drawings. I may need to leave that for now. Okay, so, I was genuinely expecting this to break lower. So for me, when, this area was defended, weekly VWAP again, in this gap on Friday, to me, that was a sign that, potentially bulls are in control of this market. Now attempting to reclaim this previous 3 days of balance. So I'm potentially looking for this to trade up towards at least the 202 area from here, and then we're kind of this local range highs again. So beyond that, we'll have to see. But for me, it looks reasonably constructive. Just purely looking at the PA, we have kind of this leg down is potentially demand now. So we did retest it here. Could we come and retest that area again? We've got a bit of an imbalance here, retesting previous week's value low, weekly value low, monthly value low, all around this sort of high volume node. So if we get another push lower, this would be potentially an area to look to bid around the low 180s. But if we can show that we have accepted within this 3-day composite, then of course, I'm expecting us to trade higher first, at least towards the 203 area, and then we can see if that can break out. And then again, are we going to flip the 30-90 day VWAPs here, or do we reject and continue to range for a bit longer? So I would say we are neutral in this composite, bullish above 205, let's say, just for the sake of rounding, and bearish if we accept below 183. Which is this 3-week composite low. We've had many interactions, but it's held, right? So deviated, got back within. This is a failed breakdown. So bullish against that level until it's lost, essentially. But again, it looks quite constructive. It's just relatively neutral for now, and more range bound than anything. Bullish above 205. Alts, there's lots I could say. ZEC's looking really good. So 2 weeks of balance broke out. I'm now thinking that this trades up towards 345, which is the 414 extension of this range. These tend to be, the 414 tends to be well respected in these situations. So there, we've just had a lot of shorting of this coin into these lows. Funding was very negative here on Wednesday, Thursday. Got above the POC, lots of chop, compression, and then the breakout. So 345 is a logical target for ZEC from here, I think. Hype reclaiming this previous 10-week composite. So this is one of the few coins which has now flipped the 30 and 90-day VWAPs, pretty strong off the lows. Obviously, some good news. But yeah, any retest now around the mid-41s is an obvious place to be buying. So buying and balance here, untested so far. Can we come and retest the mid-41 to 42 area? We're at resistance at the moment. Or do we just continue to trade up towards the composite highs? Either of those could happen. But certainly if we get a retest of the mid-41s, I think it's a gift. XRP's broken out. Coins are looking pretty good. So, a couple of weeks of balance again. Just starting to trade up above the 30-day, above yearly VWAP again. So it needs to get above now 276. But yeah, these coins are trading up more rapidly than I expected. I thought we would probably see much more ranging before we see these breakouts. As it is, the market's looking stronger earlier than I thought it might. So previous range, support. If we can get above that, then it starts to look really good. And then I think, potentially we're looking for new all-time highs. I'll just go over a couple more. XPL showing the first sort of signs of a bullish shift, really, well, since the highs, let's say. So balanced, obviously, since the nuke. Now trying to reclaim developing value from the all-time high, where we have continuously rejected over the past few weeks. See, broke below value here, now trading back within. So looking for potentially a rotation up to this 47 area from here, with possible resistance at the point of control. So I'm in along on XPL from 38, high 37s, and looking for at least a POC and then potentially here, and then we'll see if we can break out or if it continues to range for longer. But at least showing some, signs that it's not going to break lower, given that we traded below value and reclaimed, or trying to reclaim, over the past day or two. There are other things I like, but I don't want to go over too much right now. It's mostly just a big picture outlook for the week. So obviously things can change. But yeah, I'm encouraged. I think the signs are pretty good. Just need to see continuation of this condition, and we're just going to continue to trade up. So until I see obvious response from bears and some sign that they're in control again, it makes sense to side with what we're seeing, i.e. bullish reacceptance into this value, bullish reacceptance into monthly value, potentially now bullish reacceptance into previous quarter's value. And if we can flip this 2-week composite low, then I think we are bottomed and probably just going to continue to trade up. So fingers crossed that's the case. Obviously cautious until that happens, but yeah, I'm reasonably optimistic. So let's keep our fingers crossed for a good week, and I'll speak to you tomorrow.